we know it's the end of the year and there's all these things you need to do business-wise. I want to go over some of that. But about a week and a half ago, I was in Asheville for the Home Care Association Leadership Conference. And I attended a couple of sessions where I learned some things that I thought you all might need to know so that you can start watching out for some of these things. So that's what I wanted to do today, is to make sure we go over some of this and just make sure you all have that knowledge. So in regard to electronic visit verification, I think most or all of you are probably doing that, especially those of you that do Medicaid. I just saw Phil Feldman join. Phil, thanks for coming today. But if you have the free version of Medicaid.
Thanks for the invitation, Patty.
Yes, thank you. If you have Medicaid and you use the source that they send you for electronic visit verification, that is SanData. And Phil Feldman is on the line. He works for SanData and has given us quite a bit of information about that. So what I wanted to do is to talk to you all about what electronic visit verification really is and how we got here. So it was mandated by Congress under the 21st Century Cures Act in 2016. And what they wanted to do was make sure that all of the information about a client or a patient is electronic and that those systems connect to each other. And it was in regard to making sure that our patients are safe. So it's only been a couple of years ago, I don't think it's quite 3 years, that DHHS here in North Carolina went ahead and implemented it. So, and as I said, they're using SanData for the Medicaid part of it. I want you all to know that in your policies and procedures, you should have an EVV policy. You should have, and some of you that have been around a long time, you may not have one, because when you got your policies approved years ago, there was no electronic visit verification. But for all of the policies that I've assisted my clients with over the last 2 to 3 years, we have had to submit an EVV policy, and it goes over things like that you must train an employee when they start working for your company on the mobile app or telephony or just a regular landline. You must make sure they're trained. You should train them when they're hired. And then annually, if you need to update it with your other training, you should make sure they're updated. And then if you have employees out there or clients that don't understand it, or employees that are having trouble really getting the system right and getting their data in, you should do refreshers. And so this is basically what your EVV policy states. And we know all the time, every time we have those meetings, I say to you all, we have to follow what's in our policy. So when your policy really should, your electronic verification system should definitely capture all of these things: the type of service, the individual receiving the service, that would be your client, the date of service, the location of service, the individual providing the care, that is your aide, and the time the service begins and ends. So we know that if SanData's doing this for North Carolina, that they provide all of that. But if you choose a system, wherever you go and choose that system, you need to let them know my EVV needs to capture all of this. Most EVV vendors are compliant, but you need to be sure, because you have to capture this data, especially if you do Medicaid or Medicare or something like that. You definitely do. And then this is good data for a private company to have if you don't do those. Also, your EVV policy, once you make sure you have one in your system or in your policies and procedures, it should be reviewed quarterly when you do your quarterly reviews, and annually when you do your quality assurance review. That's something that you would state in your policy. So when I was at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that they were emphasizing, they had a group of lawyers there from Baker Donaldson, and they talked about, one of the ladies talked about all of the audits that have been going on related to electronic visit verification. And of course, we know that if you submit something for a claim and there's no EVV data on the other end, it's not going to pay. So you would know you've got to go and fix that. But you all have so much to do and your time is so valuable. You need that to go in and be correct the first time. It all goes back to training. Make sure that your employees are fully trained on the system. Catch it early if they're not trained and retrain them. That is the agency responsibility. And then I've had a few clients to call me and say, well, you know, my aides really don't understand it and they're not getting it right. So I go in the office and I do an override and I put it in myself. Well, my eyes got this big when the lawyer was speaking, and she said that if there's a high percentage of manual data being entered in the office and not coming through the system the proper way, that those will trigger audits by PCG, Public Consulting Group. That's one of the audit entities. So just know that if you're overriding and you're constantly going in there, now they gave you that feature because they want you to be able to go in and correct things from time to time. But if you're entering every piece of data entry on your clients in there every day, that is not good. Many years ago, you know, we used to talk about, I don't think we called it AI, but we said, you know, they have these systems and they look at everything we do. Well, AI has gotten really, really good now, and it'll kick you out in a moment and you'll be at the top of the list for an audit. And then just make sure that you have your employee training, and because that's key to everything, and that you follow your agency policy. I want you all to please go into your policies and procedures and be sure you have that, because you do need that policy. So as far as other end of the year tasks, we know that you should be doing a quarterly records review in your agency. Those you need to be sure that they're up to date. By now, you should have done 3 of them. And those will feed right into your annual review. Okay. And those, when you do those quarterly ones, they will come right into they'll be there for you to do your annual review. So you would just kind of clump those together. There's other things you look at on your annual review, but y'all just keep in mind, every year at the beginning of the year, you should be doing an annual agency review. There's a form that a lot of you have for both quarterly and annually, but make sure that you get those done. Most of you on this line, I'm sure all of you have a DHSR license that needs to be renewed by December 31st. That process this year is electronic. And I believe you all received like 2 emails. One of them said, we have this enterprise system. You need to go in and get something called an NCID. Well, those people that do Medicaid, they have an NCID because they have to get into the system to process their claims. But I've been getting calls from some of the agencies that don't do Medicaid, they're private, and they don't have an NCID. They're giving you the information in the email that they're sending, but get that NCID, and by all means, go in the system and renew your license before December 31st. That was also something that the lawyer brought up in the session that I sat in on, is that some people are not renewing their license as they should. So if midnight, December 31st comes and your license has not been renewed, you're really not authorized to provide that service. So you all get on that and be sure you get it done. It used to be we sent in a piece of paper where we just filled everything out again, and then it asked us some information about how many clients did you have in this county, that county, what are their ages. It just asks you a lot about your business. So make sure you do the electronic version. I have not been into the electronic version myself yet. I probably will go into it next week with one of my clients. And so if you all need some help, let me know. But this is very important. And for those of you that do Medicaid, there is a form called a Medicaid attestation. I can't think of the number for that form, but every year at the end of the year, it's a 1-page form. You're supposed to complete that form, and it asks questions like, did you do a client survey? There's certain things it asks you, and you have to sign it. And I believe it gets uploaded into the QI report system. but they're tracking that as well. You are out of compliance with your Medicaid agreements if you don't do that. And I mentioned a client survey. All Medicaid providers should do a survey. You can create that survey yourself. I can help you all with that as well. But even if you're not Medicaid, you should be doing a client survey to see what your clients have to say about you. Now, if you have 55 clients and you send that survey to all of them, if only 10 people return it, that's okay, but you need to show that you sent it to them. You don't have to make sure everyone does it, but they need to have the opportunity. So that's basically what I had today. I like to let you all know that I'm happy to provide information to you all to help you all stay compliant. But before you change anything in your policies and procedures or any operations that you do, make sure you go to the regulatory authority that controls that and you clear it with them before you do it. So that's what I had for you all today. And right now I'm going to open things up for questions. If anyone has any questions about what I went over, I know some of you came in a little bit late, but as I said before, I will upload this to the YouTube channel, and you all know you can email me at any time if you have questions. If you have anything, just open your mic and we'll see if we can answer it for you today. Phil, did you have anything related to the EVV that I was talking about? Did you think of anything else as you
No, Patty, you covered it really, really well. I think especially in terms of the manual entry of the visit data. The whole purpose of EVV is for the data to be captured in the home at the time the service is to be performed. And, there are two elements to it. One is fraud, waste, and abuse that CMS is pushing down on Medicaid for EVV to eliminate. So it just makes the data questionable if there's a lot of manual entry going on. In addition to that, when you do that, you have to put a reason code in for why you are making a manual entry. So, they're looking at those reason codes. So it's very important. Also, just from, we're all worried about capacity and worried about having enough personnel and keeping the personnel that we have. When the EVV is working appropriately and they're using it, there's less that they have to do. They're not putting data on timesheets. They don't have to bring timesheets into the office. They're getting paid right away, etc. So if they're using EVV appropriately, it makes their life so much easier. So I agree with you, and I think it's a great point about training the staff, and also training the staff about the benefits of EVV and why it's there in the first place.
Right. Well, when EVV first started in North Carolina, there were numerous agencies that called me and said that some of their senior aides decided they just weren't going to work anymore in the agency because they could not learn the system. Now, we can't afford to let them leave for that reason. So I want you all to learn to adapt your training. If you've got to sit down with Miss Jones, she's almost 70 years old, but she does a great job and she can take care of her clients and she cooks and she's kind. Sit down with her one-on-one and teach her how to do that, or have one of your aides to do that. We just can't afford to have them leave because they might not be able to lift and turn and do all of those things. But I had many aides that worked for me that were retired and they never thought they'd work again, but I found a place for them. I made sure they weren't in a place where they could get hurt, but there were things they could do. There was a certain client that they could work with, and we need them now more than ever. I haven't put people in the home in 5 years. And so now we need them a whole lot more. So don't just let them run off like that. Cater to them. If you sign them up, they're working for you. It's going to be much more expensive for you to go and try to hire someone than for you to sit down maybe an hour and help them, or even if you're out at the house sometime and they need to know how to do it from there. I think I would go that extra mile, and I really think it would be worth it to you all with the horrific personnel issues that you all are having. So you all know I take questions on other things as well. If you all don't have any questions on what I talked about today, Are there any other questions that anyone may have? Okay, well, that's wonderful. Thank you all for coming. I'm not going to hold you. It's Friday, and some of you are probably going to be off or doing stuff for Veterans Day. I do want to say, if we have any veterans on the line, we thank you for your service. And I have an affinity for veterans. I had two brothers that were in Vietnam at the same time back in the 60s.
Wow.
And my brother-in-law and just all of those individuals. So I I admire the veterans. There's so many of them that start businesses, and I think about what have they been through, and they're still trying to start a business. So I try to help them on the business side as well. I know Frank Savaston is a veteran. Do we have any other veterans on the line? Okay, all right, you all. Well, I see Quentin joined a little late, but Quentin, we're going to put this video up on YouTube so you all can watch it later. But I just wanted to say to you all, thanks for coming. You all have a great weekend, and we will speak with you all soon. Get in touch with me if you need me. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.